Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris with Aquatic Ascent. Today I'm going to be taking you on a tour of my 2 fish rooms. You heard me right, 2 fish rooms. One is my bedroom. I take a lot of pride in the tanks in there. Those are the ones I try to make look pretty. They're my hobby side. And then down here, what you can see behind me, which has been featured on the channel a lot, this is my breeding for profit setup. So we're going to start off today, start up in my room with all my aquascape tanks, all what I think is really pretty. I'm going to be showing you the good, the bad, the ugly. The only maintenance I did right before this is kind of my regular routine, as well as scraping any glass that needs to be scraped. I'm going to tell you a lot about the tanks. We're going to deep dive. This is going to be a nice check-in. Each year we're going to do one of these, and if I do a lot of expansions, maybe we'll squeeze 2 in each year. But this is the end of 2024, going into 2025 in a few days, and I'm excited to show you guys what I've got going. And we'll see where we are in a year. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe down below for more tours and other shenanigans. And we're gonna hop right into the tour. Let's get up to the cool tanks. I'm starting off with a tank that's near and dear to me, and unfortunately dealing with a lot of blackbeard algae, as you can see. But this is my guppy tank. This is the first ever tank I planted, period. It's been rescaped since I first did it, and you can see there's a lot of male guppies left from my original 6, as well as some extras I've added in there. But this thing was just so much fun to make. I have a ton of different Anubias varieties in here, a lot of which I don't even know the names of, and a lot of pothos growing out the top with this light. It's an Amazon light, very nice little thing. I'll try to remember to link it in the bottom. I have a ton of dwarf sage. This is what I use to really just carp it out. Originally it was dwarf sage and Monte Carlo, but this stuff just took over it. It's gone so great. I started with like 6 stems of it. I've been able to plant other tanks with it, and it's a beautiful plant. Takes over. You see a thick layer of mulm at the bottom. I don't do a ton of water changes on this tank. I just kind of let it do its thing, let the pothos be there. I've got my sponge filter in the back with a heater hidden, and it just comes in like crazy. So this is one that's near and dear to my heart, and how we're going to start off the tour. And we're just going to kind of work our way around. So from there, we come over here. We saw this last week when we added our swordtails. But this is my 40-gallon breeder. All this is epiphyte plants and some holding, but my sword, yeah. I have the ocelot sword in there as well. Originally, if you guys followed me on Instagram, that's kind of where I started my content creating with the fish stuff. This was meant to be a hillstream loach breeding project. It did not work out that way. I have 2 of my 8 loaches left from when I first got them, which is a bit disappointing. I think a big issue, again, like with the Corydoras, is the hardness in my water. I have an RO unit that's supposed to arrive here at the beginning of next week to really help with those water changes and softening, kind of cutting some of the minerals and making the water not as, mineral filled. But in here, the only species in here are my black mollies and my orange swordtails with my one black swordtail. Some people were a little bit worried thinking that these might cross, but one thing is that they're completely different species. These aren't like mollies and guppies where they're both so closely related that they can cross. Same thing with guppies and endlers. Those 3 species are all poeciliids. Poecilii. I've taken a lot of cuts of this already. We're going to call them peas. Their genus name starts with a P. And that means they're so closely related scientifically that they can crossbreed. And these platies are Zeophorus. We're going to call them X because every time I try to pronounce the name, I completely crap the bed. So forgive me. I'm sorry if you guys are really science-y. I have them written down. I know what they are. Words are hard, guys. But yeah, I really focused on one central log. A lot of Java ferns, one huge Anubias barteri, and some Bulbitis, just all along that central log with a bunch of Java fern I did in a emerged growth experiment. And that's all just kind of scattered along the rock piles that were meant for hillstream loaches to breed in, but they never did, and so be it. Moving on from this tank, we come up here to my pea puffers. This one is probably the most out of shape of all my tanks. It's a 10-gallon tank with a 30-gallon hang on the back filter, and just a ton of pearlweed, but I've been fighting this cyano for ages because they feed such... I was feeding such protein-rich foods. I was feeding a lot of bloodworms, a lot of... mainly frozen bloodworms, and now I've kind of changed it to baby brine shrimp and blackworms, so it doesn't muck up the water as bad because anything that isn't finished is either such a low bioload that I don't really have to worry about it mucking up the tank, or it just goes into the substrate and will regenerate like the blackworms do and become a meal later on. So you can see my 2 peas. You really should keep them in like a larger shoal. I'm probably going to be rehoming these guys. I don't know. I love them, but the tank's a bit small. I've only got 2 left because the male I had with these 2 ladies was the runt of the litter. And he unfortunately passed a little while ago, but they're just so beautiful and fun to watch. They're so inquisitive, and they've just got so much personality, but fighting the cyano in the tank has not been fun. And it just makes me wonder what I want to do with this tank. I've added the salvinia at the top a little bit more recently to help pull some extra nutrients out of the water. We're going to keep coming around the room. We come right here. There's 2 tanks. This first one was my very first shrimp tank. I had a line of black carbons that bred for me once. You can see one of them there. And they all bred once, and they never kicked again. I added some endlers in here, picked them up at an auction just because I was like, you know what, let me give endlers a shot. And they've just adored this water. You can see some of my older males and my first generation of males starting to color up, like this guy right here. Swimming around chasing people, he's starting to finally get his colors. And they've been growing up real nicely. I've got some species of boos in here that I picked up, and a dwarf hairgrass carpet that's been getting torn up by my nerite snail, who is at least 2 years old by now. So he's a bit of an old man, just cruising along all the time. But I love this tank, and I just kind of let it go. If the shrimp breed again, that'd be awesome, but I don't see it happening until I start cutting this with RO water and reducing some of the mineral content. But these guys are just awesome. So much activity in the tank. I reach my hand up to the top and they all come running. They're like, ooh, food, feed me. I lift the lid and they're ready. They're ready for food to come in. Great little guys. If you guys want a smaller live bearer, get a line of endlers, but don't cross them with others. Keep them natural. We don't need endler mutts. Don't put them in with guppies. Keep your endlers and keep a line of them. And you'll get some absolute beauties like these tails. Coming down here is a little betta tank that has been really brutal with algae. I'm constantly pulling this green hair algae out. The light, I've dropped it down to even 6 hours a day. And it doesn't seem to really do much for it. This is Señor Mostaza. Translated, that means Mr. Mustard in Spanish. He was picked out by my girlfriend, and he was this beautiful yellow, but over the last year, he's really changed to mainly this blue hue. And he's just stunning. The carpet of Liliopsis, I believe I'm pronouncing that correct, has gotten so thick. I believe it's also has microsword as a common name, or that may be a different plant. You can see some Monte Carlo still buried in there, and it's just taken over the whole tank. It's awesome. It's so green. If that algae wasn't in there, I think this tank would be my favorite. It also used to have a lot of red root floaters. If you see my channel banner, that bright red, that was all growing in this tank, going crazy. I have no idea what I did. Most of it's died off and melted now, which is a little heartbreaking, but Señor Mostaza's happy. He's been living a good life in here. It's just a nice little planted tank. Then we come over to my pride and joy, which is also a huge pain in my side sometimes. But this is my community tank. It's kind of like the island of misfit toys we are in holiday season, if you can enjoy that reference, where it started off just as my Ember Tetras. Actually, this tank was a nightmare at first. It started off as a bunch of Cardinal Tetras with my Coolie Loaches and a Betta. Half the Cardinals immediately died to ick. It was my first time I had ever experienced ick. I treated the tank. I thought everything was getting better, then I lost my betta to fin rot about 2 weeks later. And that was just a complete and utter nightmare. I learned how to treat these diseases now, but coming into it, it was tough. It was that learning curve for me. But I replaced the cardinals with these embers. I had a honey gourami named Soul. He is in my profile picture. Unfortunately, he passed away about a month ago. And then I had a ton of coolie loaches in here. Now I have a panda cory that I took in from someone just getting rid of some fish near me. I know we could really use a school, but the tank is loaded pretty heavily. A female endler that I don't know which endlers it came from, because I also used to have some blue star endlers, and I didn't want to mix her in and get genes muddied up, so she's just kind of in here. And then here I have one of my Pseudomugal luminatus. I bought 6 a couple months ago, well, almost a year ago now. My plan was to breed them out, and 5 of the 6 died within a week. No, I have no idea what to. They were just kaput. And I wasn't able to get to that fish store again. It was quite a drive for me. It was like 40 minutes away. And yeah, I wasn't going to make it back up there to return or try to get new ones. So I was like, all right, you're going to go into the community tank and just hang out. And now my luminatus just hangs out in here. I had a buddy at one of my local fish clubs, had the same thing happen to them. So they gave me their leftover luminatus. They're just both the same sex, so they're not really going to have the chance to spawn. So I'm going to have to find another batch of them to breed like I did my signifers. But they're definitely on the bucket list because they're just so beautiful when they get colored up. And then the prettiest shrimp I've ever seen. It's like a toxic waste. It's got green and yellow, and it just looks like toxic waste. It's a Neocaradinia that came from one of my cull tanks. And I wish I had more things to breed it out, but obviously shrimp have kicked my butt because of my water parameters. So when my RO unit comes, I'm definitely going to be getting into Neos and having them really kick off breeding and have a really nice quality. But this guy's just so neat and absolutely stunning. I believe it's a female, so I should potentially be able to cross it with a yellow and maybe get some similar offspring, but that would have to be quite the project. So yeah, that's this community tank. A lot of crypts, a lot of Java ferns, and a lot of algae that I've been fighting, unfortunately. You can see that in there, and even some bladderwort that I've been slowly picking at. This tank is usually what I'd sell plants out of. That Ludwigia acruata grows so nicely. People love it, but I'm not going to sell stuff that has algae and bladderwort all growing through it. So it kind of just sits in here for now while I fight it. And this filter, we're going to have an update on this filter because it has been killed by Malaysian trumpet snails. They've all just decided to crawl inside it and blow up my impeller. So I'm just replacing it with a sponge filter in the next week or so. Yeah, just take it all in. So that's this tank. We've got these two. We have our puffers. Our 40-gallon. And our guppies. Let me take you down to the breeding rack. We're going to do a little walkthrough, show you what I've been working on. Not too much new stuff has changed, but I did want to give us a baseline, so let's go check it out. We're back down here at the breeding rack. It's not the be-all, end-all of everything. A lot of stuff is still moving around. I have a few empty tanks that are waiting for Fry to grow up to be moved into the grow out. But besides that, I've got some cool stuff in store and some really nice species to show off. Starting all the way over here with my longfin lemons. As you guys can see, this tank has 6 longfin lemon bristlenose plecos that are growing out, and they're just going to be breeding in here as a colony. I'm going to constantly be able to pull from them down the line. They probably need another 4 months or so before they can start spawning. I got them, they were about 6 months old. I've had them for about 2 months now, so They should be coming up on that year mark. I'm feeding them pretty heavily. I do baby brine in here, as well as frozen green beans. I do my staple Pleco food that from Sarah, my bottom feeder tablets, and they seem to just jump on those. But these guys are absolutely stunning. They're also where I have my corkscrew valve. I love this plant. It's so pretty, and when it really starts taking over, it just adds so much character to a tank. If you have a really good substrate system, this stuff will take off like a rocket. I only have sand in here, and this started out as maybe 6 or 7 nodes, and it spread around like wildfire. For a substrate with no nutrients, just the waste that gets built down into it from snails and such, I think that's a pretty good start for them. Up here, if you look kind of closely, you might be able to see some of my rainbow fish fry. This is going to be another grow out tank, but unfortunately, I had a hydra outbreak, so I think a lot of those little guys got picked off. And let's see if we can get the hydra on camera. I've got one. Let's see if we can get the hydra on camera. If we find, the tip of this. So if we zoom in right here. If you look at the very tip, that's centered in focus. That's a hydra. What these are basic. They're kind of like freshwater anemones. Those little tentacles will sting prey and draw them in. So because I feed baby brine shrimp in here, they'll catch that in the water column. The bigger hydras will probably pick off fry. These are really bad to get in shrimp tanks because they'll also eat shrimp babies. But to show you how bad it is in some of my tanks, I really need to go through with some no planaria or something and just kill them off. But you can see right here, we're by the snail, just above. There's another one, and that one's pretty beefy. You can see them all over the tank. It's become a real pain and a real problem. But I've kind of been ignoring it because I haven't, given it enough thought. The only fish that are going to be in here are going to be the plecos, so I don't know if the hydra will be able to mess with the babies. They don't seem to mess with the babies over in my other tank, and I probably do need to just go through everything and treat it with no planaria. Pull my mystery snails and just put them in a separate holding tank for a couple days and basically reset all these tanks. Down here, we have the tank we set up last week. We have our soon-to-be L134 leopard frog pleco tank. You can see my baby platies are all still in there, and I did finish cutting up my slate for the plecos today, and so I'm going to have a lot more of these little pleco house things ready and for sale. If you're interested in one of them and want one, reach out to me on Instagram, Aquatic Ascent. DM me and we can chat. I ship across the US. But this is all just wood, Java ferns, Anubias, and a little bit of Bolbitis. And soon we'll have some nice, really cool plecos in here. Other than that, there's not a ton to see. But when we move over here to the right, this is one of my shrimp colonies that has a huge algae issue. I haven't fed this tank in almost a month. I blacked it out for a week, and even yet, there's just an insane amount of algae growing through my moss. So if you have any suggestions on how to get rid of this, that would be much appreciated, because I've killed the light, I've stopped feeding, there's just some shrimp in here, there's like 7 shrimp in here left that haven't bred for me yet. A few of them are back there. And I've just got no idea what could be causing this. More likely than not, I'm just going to be doing a total tank reset on this and tossing most of the stuff that has algae covering it. But if I can get rid of it on its own, that's probably a lot better for me than anything else. Coming up top, we have another what was a shrimp colony and now is a home for my betta that I impulsively bought because it was at a big box store and just really, really cool, and I couldn't help myself, so I picked this guy up. He used to be at my work desk when I still worked at my previous job. I had him just there hanging out with me. This is Tormenta, which means storm in Spanish. And he's so pretty. He even has a blue under hue. That's just gorgeous. We've got a little heater in there just set to 76. So he's nice and cozy. And he just kind of hangs out in this 5-gallon. I dropped some blackworms in there, and he's able to just munch, go to town. Unfortunately, this was once a buzzing shrimp colony, and like all my other tanks, because my water is a problem, it did not stay that way. Moving over, we have our big breeding rack. This is where we're going to have a lot of time, and we're going to spend a lot of time together here. But I do want to dive into each tank individually. I'm going to start off with the most boring one. This is a soon-to-be project once we get the RO water. I'm just going to be straight RO remineralizing to perfect neocarotinia parameters. I'm going to dump all this out, clear the water, and I'm going to redo everything. Just sand, inert sand bottom. We're going to start from scratch. Then we have my parents. These are my Praecox rainbows. I love these fish so much. They're beautiful. I was given them by a fellow member at my local aquarium club, and he was like, hey, I just want to get rid of these. I know you're breeding up some rainbow fish, which we'll cover in a minute. Give me some of their fry, and these are all yours. So you can see the male right there has a stunning just red hue on his fins, and in the morning when they're spawning, he lights up even more. I've got the 3 ladies with him. And the tank's a little bit ugly because it's just a ton of algae, but they're thriving. There are also a ton of hydra all throughout this tank because they get baby brine shrimp every day. But I don't really worry about it too much because there shouldn't be any fry in this tank, just in my spawning mops that I pull. And because of the hydra, I haven't pulled any spawning mops. But we come down here to the left. These are their babies. These guys are about a month old by now, maybe a month and a half. And there you can see their orange bellies are just lit up from eating all the baby brine shrimp. There's a lot more that hide in and throughout this hornwort. It still has some diatoms on it. Due time, that'll clear up. But these guys are growing so well, so fast. A lot of them are almost a 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch big, which is crazy. Rainbows usually grow a lot slower than that, so I'm pretty astonished by this. I've got some pleco caves down there because I didn't know what I might be doing in here. Once they get a bit bigger, I might introduce a pair of just common bristlenose to breed under them. You know, I gotta make use of as much space as I can while also utilizing grow out space. We are breeding for profit down here, and the goal is to produce as many fish as possible. As many high-quality fish as possible, because I want to make sure that we always have healthy bloodlines in the hobby, and that's one of my big goals. Coming down below, we have my blue eyes. This is my group of 2 reverse trios. These are Pseudomugil signifers, also known as the Pacific Rainbow. Oh, look at them there, just showing off their colors. Let's let them dance for a little bit. So these guys, I have my spawning mops in there. It's a really simple tank setup. It's a sand bottom, a little piece of wood, some terracotta pots we broke up, and my spawning mops, which they lay eggs in constantly. On either side, we have a grow out tank for them. This grow out is for their first batch of fry. These guys have been hatching over the last few weeks, and I have so many fish. It's crazy. I haven't even been able to count all of them, and they're not all done hatching. But while we've got that grow out, which is about a month old now, some of them are only out of the egg for a week or 2. We have this one, which, again, this is the second batch, but they've already started hatching. You can see a few of the fry swimming around. But what I find really fascinating is if we come down here to the bottom, you can see a lot of these black specks. You can see fry starting to hatch out of their eggs, almost fully developed. Right in the center of my screen here, you can see that these guys are going to be hatching any day now. You can watch the life cycle of this fish take form right in front of you. So a lot of these black and dark specks are just eggs. So each one of these will be a fish that looks just like these guys one day. And they're absolutely stunning. Same thing's going with down here, but you don't see as many specks because there aren't as many eggs left. I should be on the last 2 or 3 days of eggs on these guys. And my last few fries should be harvested pretty soon. Well, not harvested. Hatching pretty soon. So that's very exciting. Moving over and continuing on, we have my Corydoria hasbrosus. So these are one of the dwarf cory species, and they're just adorable. Also known as the salt and pepper cory. They have a ton of energy. These guys are always swimming around the tank, always looking for each other. They're still really young, so I don't think they're going to breed anytime soon. But when they do, it's just going to be so cool because I'll hopefully just have a ton of these guys down at the bottom, and I will have a lot of CPDs growing out above them, which is in the tank next door. I have my adult colony of CPDs, and I have an automatic egg catcher from Daku Aquatics running constantly. So that pulls their eggs up into here, and then I get fry. I don't even have to harvest eggs. I don't need to pull them. And some of these bigger fry are already starting to get on to brine shrimp. This is my first batch of the CPDs. I've only had this rack set up for about 2 months now, maybe going on 3 with fish in it. But I'll be producing hundreds of CPD each month, hopefully, once they really start getting used to everything and I get my water right. One thing I found when working with these Celestial Pearl Danios, the eggs do not like hard water. Well, they don't like the higher pH water. It seems like they struggled to hatch out. What I did, I added a 3 or 4 Indian almond leaves to the tank just to release a lot of tannins and make the water a bit more acidic. And it seems like they've really started to get out of their eggs a lot more and hatch a lot more frequently. So I haven't had to worry about them as much. Just looking at this right now, I think I have about 20 fry. And anyone who knows, CPDs are, people love them. People want them all the time. And, you know, they fetch a pretty penny for what they are. So these guys, I feel like, are going to do really, really well for me. And if you're wondering what's in this tank, the only thing in it is hornwort. This is going to be the first CPD grow out, and they're all going to go in here. And hopefully when I breed these cories, their first grow out is going to go in here. They're either going to go in here, down in this tank, or I'm going to put their babies in at the bottom under these guys once they're out of the fry system. Well, my fry containers. That's what those 3 little plastic bins are for. They're going to be my little fry hatching, egg hatching stations. Last thing we have on this rack is my Corydoris, my bronze cory tank, and these guys are super shy. You can see one of them hiding under there. These guys have given me some struggle, but they're a really, really fun group of fish, especially when they come out and feed and I step back. So this tank just, it's simple, but these guys are doing well. I'm going to do a big RO water change once I finally get my RO system, and hopefully that'll trigger them to spawn because the water won't be so hard. And I'll, fingers crossed, get some cory eggs. I will cover this really quickly. This is my blackworm culture. This doesn't produce blackworms like you'd want it to, but it does sustain a culture long enough to feed for a few weeks. So what I'll do every couple of days, I'll spray some fry food in here, and then I'll also stir up the substrate, which is just pebbles I got from Home Depot, rinsed them off, and I'll stir it up with my aquarium forceps or tongs or whatever you want to call them to break up some of the worms, because if you cut one of these worms in half, you'll end up with 2 worms and they'll grow out and be one healthy organism. So this has really helped me save a bit of money on live food. I just have it constantly running in the cory tank because, well, that's where they're going to be fed. I also have a lot of live worms in here that hide under whatever, so the cories will go digging around, and if any of those worms poke their heads out, they become a snack pretty quickly. We're going to move on from this rack. This is how I hatch my brine shrimp. I just have this screwed into a wall, and I have my hatchery on each side. I'm going to come over here to the last three with our buddy Shrek. I'm going to start off down here at my guppy bin. This has been my solution to not having space for more tanks because I haven't built another rack. And I do still live at home with my parents, so... Well, my father, I still live at home with my dad, and... Yeah, he's not too keen on me getting a lot more fish tanks until the rack starts really producing a lot more. But in here, we can take a look, and we'll see, I love my hornwort, I've got some frog bit, and I've got these beautiful guppies that swim around. They have so much color. I don't even know what to call them because they get purple, they get yellow in them, they get a snake skin. They just do really, really well, and I'm hoping they'll just breed out like crazy in here. And every couple of months I'll be able to take a net full out, bring them to my local store just along with whatever order they have, and properly get stuff stashed and just be a nice little extra thing, as well as letting me get a little bit of love for my guppies because they were the fish I started off with. And while I've moved a bit away from live bearers, I still kind of have a soft spot in my heart for some of the cooler guppies, and it's just a nice way to add a little extra option to some of the people I work with. Now here's my quarantine tank. These guys are going crazy. They're my goodies. They are... Oh, actually, they are my San Marcos. That's the one. I always want to say Rio something because that's another really common goodied. But they're San Marcos red-tail split fins. These guys are a critically endangered species in the wild, so I'm kind of going to make it a mission to breed them out a lot and get them distributed a bit through the hobby. If you guys want to join me on that mission and find other people with them to trade bloodlines, that's really cool. So I have 2 pairs that I got at an auction about 2 weeks ago, and they're neat. They've got that red tail, they get a bit of gold, and a little bit of blue or silver, I guess you could say, in them. And it's just neat. I'm really enjoying them so far. I don't know what tank they're going to end up in. They might end up above my cories to give them a bit of a dither fish, or I'll remove all my swordtail fry and add them above my plecos. But that's still a to-be-determined thing. But absolute beauties of a fish, very neat, and a funny small world moment. After I bought them, my girlfriend is from Mexico, and her family lives kind of right where these guys are from in the wild, and I picked them up because they're a fish from Mexico, just like, haha, hey, I got a fish from Mexico, and my girlfriend's from Mexico. But it was kind of crazy to see that, wow, these are from right by where you're from. And then I also have a breeding pair of just common bristlenose plecos in here, doing their thing, again, to add some more options for fish that come out. We move on here to my super red bristlenose tank. And these are a bunch of long fins that has just been a project over the last little while. It's also my Neocaridina cull tank, and also assassin snail breeding tank, because this tank was picked up from an aquarist that was leaving the hobby. Didn't bother replacing the substrate. I knew there were a ton of Malaysian trumpet snails in there, and I just said, hey, they're in the substrate churning through it. It's a mature substrate. I'm not going to mess with it. But you can see right through there my big male and some of his babies. Let me see if I can... No, I scared him. I was going to say, that's kind of his favorite hiding spot. He really loves it over there. You can see some of the original babies. So I got that long fin at a store a while ago, and I had a short fin bristlenose pleco who was pretty mature at the time. So I was like, hey, I really want to get a long fin colony going, and you can see by this baby right here that they do produce long fin offspring. But when you're breeding plecos, if you want long fin bristlenose, it's a recessive gene. So you need to, or it's a dominant gene. My apologies. So there is no such thing as like hiding a long fin gene. You won't get long fins from breeding out 2 short fin plecos. You need to have one of the plecos be a long fin to get long fin offspring. And obviously, I had my male has his long fins, my female doesn't, and I get a mix of the 2. There was a really mature one that was right back there but went to hide. And this tank has just been really nice. I have the fat Java fern, still fighting the same annoying algae that I get in a lot of my tanks. Hydrogen peroxide seems to be the only way to get rid of this stuff, but no matter what, the tiniest piece that's left comes back and retakes the tank. It's not really hurting anything. This tank's not meant to be for looks. I'm more focused on the fish down here. So I enjoy that. And I enjoy looking at it sometimes. I try to let some plants grow up, but with the algae, again, I'll never sell plants with a ton of algae on them or something that's a pain to get rid of. So this tank really is just for the fish now. The shrimp kind of exist in it, but they don't even breed. Like I said, the water's too hard, and I do think I need to start cutting some of it in my water changes with RO water, and that'll start giving me some more success when it comes to breeding shrimp at least. Thank you guys so much for watching, checking out all my tanks with me, my 2 fish rooms. Yeah, haha, I got you a little bit clickbaity with that. But I really appreciate you guys spending time with me. We've built up a really cool community so far, and we're still growing. So make sure you subscribe down below, join the community, comment, let me know what you liked about this place, let me know any suggestions you may have. I'm definitely always open to criticism and trying to learn and become the best fish keeper I possibly can. Yeah, with that being said, thank you, I'll catch you in the next one, and I will see you next year. Ha ha ha. Wait. Oh, this is going to release on New Year's Day. Whatever, I'm filming this in 2024. See you guys in the next video.